Welcome to the Dire podcast. I am your host, Sean Pfeil. Before we jump in, I want to welcome and thank my first real subscribers. I did a reaction video not too long ago for the Final Fantasy VII Remake theme song trailer, and my view count on YouTube went up by 2,000% from that one reaction video. Got a few actual subscribers, so I just want to thank you for joining. Today's podcast, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to go over the Final Fantasy VII Remake theme song trailer. I have some comments about some of the different things that I saw in there. We're going to do a quick meditation in the middle of the podcast to center our thoughts and de-stress. And then we are going to add 5 games to the list: Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., Galaga, Balloon Fight, and the featured game for this episode of the podcast, The Legend of Zelda. For those of you watching on YouTube, you're watching me play Deus Ex Mankind Divided. In the last podcast, I said I would be starting a full play of Final Fantasy 15, but I couldn't bring myself to replay it. I've just got too much stuff in the backlog, and I didn't want to spend dozens more hours playing through Final Fantasy 15. I guess I just wasn't ready to play it. So I'm playing Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which I didn't get very far in the first time I played, so it should be a lot of fun. May or may not actually do a full play for it for this podcast. We shall see. For those of you listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify podcasts, you can head over to dirediredocs.com to find the video version of this podcast if you want to watch me let's play Deus Ex. Alright, so let's jump in here and talk about the Final Fantasy VII theme song trailer. The first impression I have was, oh my gosh, this game is freaking beautiful. I mean, all the trailers that this game has had have looked great, but man alive, there's just so much visual, aesthetic beauty on screen that they showed a lot in this trailer, which I'll get to, and just everything that they showed looked so good. The visuals in this game are going to be top notch. The theme song itself, which is part of why they did the trailer, I thought it was interesting. I don't have any strong feelings on it, one way or the other. It's Nobuo Uematsu is doing the theme song. I don't remember who's singing the lyrics in the song. Apparently, he is not going to do any of the music for the game beyond the theme song. They're bringing in other artists to, not remix, that's not the right word, reorchestrate, I guess, his tracks from the original game, but he will not be doing that. He's just made the one song and then he's out, or at least that's what I've read online. But yeah, it's an interesting song. I mean, it kind of gels with the world of Final Fantasy VII, I guess. I'd like to see what the context will be of that song in game. If it's even in the game, it may just be a credits song that they play at the end. I guess we'll see. So anyway, I mentioned earlier, they showed a lot in this trailer. Like, they showed a lot. Most people at this point, if they're excited for this game, they've played through Final Fantasy VII, so they know what to expect. But this game, which is supposedly just through Midgar, and I would be surprised if it isn't at this point, they pretty much showed the entire Midgar segment. So the trailer starts off with part of the Nibelheim flashback, although it's not the one that you go through when you get to Kalm. It's the one, I can't remember when it happens in Midgar. I think it happens early on when you meet Tifa in the Seventh Heaven bar for the first time in the game. He's like sleeping or something, and he's remembering how he and Tifa were up on that water tower, and he was talking about, oh, I'm going to go to Shinra and be the #1 soldier. I'm going to be as good as Sephiroth. And Tifa's like, well, I want you to be my shining knight to come and rescue me someday. Those particular lines weren't in the trailer, but that's how the trailer starts off. I'm not going to go in order, but So that was cool getting to see that. They show pretty much all of the different leaders that are in Shinra. So they show Heidegger. He seemed a little less dictatory and a little less evil than the version in the original game. He kind of looked just kind of grumpy. We'll see. I mean, you only see him for a little bit when he's talking to oh gosh, I can't think of his name. The guy that plays Kate Sith, that's controlling him. But it was cool seeing him in the trailer. Scarlet got a lot of personality in this trailer. You know, she's got her foot resting on one of the Shinra soldiers, using him like a footstool to rest her feet. And there was another soldier that came up to tell her something, and she was like, "Oh, your timing sucks. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm in the middle of something." So it's like she punishes the soldiers for displeasing her. I think that's kind of cool. I'm interested to see where that goes. Palmer, man, he just looks like he is the epitome of the 1%, right? Like, he's like, "Ooh, I'm sipping my tea, and dang, I'm out of butter." Like, I'm curious to see what they do with his character. I felt he was a little out of place in the original game, at least compared to the rest of the Shinra cast. But I like what they did with him in this trailer, even though it was just a brief little bit that we got to see him. And we also got to see Hojo towards the middle of the trailer, the end of the theme song part, which was cool. He didn't seem as maniacal and crazy as I thought they might show him, although in the early parts of the game I think he's a little bit more calm and cool and collected, and it's only as the game progresses that he gets a little bit more mad scientist-y. Not to say he wasn't that before. But it was cool getting to see him in the trailer. They didn't show the Turks. That's all they showed for Shinra, in addition to President Shinra himself. They haven't shown Rufus. They're holding on to that one, so at least they didn't show him. They showed a lot of well, I say a lot. They showed a decent amount from the Honeybee Inn and the Don Corneo section of the game. I mean, they showed Cloud and Drag, which I don't know if that was confirmed to be in the game or not prior to this trailer, but this trailer definitely confirmed it, and I really like how they did it. I really liked the commentary that they had, and they were talking about, I'm not going to remember the words exactly, but it was like, beauty is just in the eye of the beholder. It has nothing to do with gender. Like, everything, it doesn't matter. Like, you can be what you want to be. It was something along those lines, but it just made sense within the confines of the game, and I thought that was really classy. I'm glad that it's classy, and then they follow it up with, jokes from, I guess it was Aerith going, "Tee hee, Cloud, you look so pretty," which, that's fine. I think that's okay. I don't think they're making fun. I'm glad that it made it into the game, because they could have just cut it and made a bunch of people upset. And they didn't. They went all in, so good for them. I don't like Don Corneo's voice actor, but I think also some of his lines were not matching the scene in which he said them. Like, there's the one quote that he said that drives me nuts when I've been watching this is, "You've got a mouth on you," or something like that. And he's like wriggling his fingers when he says it, but he's saying it it looks like he's like thirsting, I think, for Cloud, I guess, when he's wriggling his fingers, but when he says that line, he says it where he's kind of upset, so it just didn't match the visual. So I don't know if that was just poor acting or if they have mixed the lines of dialogue with what the video was showing. I guess we'll find out a little bit later. They showed a couple different summons. They showed Leviathan when they were fighting one of the robot bosses, and they showed the Chocomog summon. You got to see the Chocomog summon a little bit more. I honestly don't remember. I think it's Final Fantasy VII, where when you summon Chocomog, you have a random chance of getting Fat Chocobo, and he just falls from the sky and like squishes all the enemies on screen. if that's true, I'd be curious to see if we see that in the game. They show Cloud, Barret, and Tifa climbing Shinra Tower, and in the incarnation in the trailer, you hear Cloud basically side with Tifa, where Barret wanted to go in guns blazing, and he's like, yeah, let's not set off any alarms. We're here to get Aerith. Let's get in and get out without causing too much trouble. And Barret's like, oh, okay. And it's funny because if you pay attention to, I can't remember which shot it is. I think it's when Cloud's running up some escalators. If you look in the bottom right corner where their HP bars are, you can see what floor they're on, and they were all on different floors. So I thought that was kind of neat. They show, I am actually surprised they showed this. It got me super hyped, but this was something that I thought they would have saved for the player to see in-game. They showed the collapse of Sector 7. I mean, they didn't show the whole thing, but they show them swinging on the rope, and it almost looked like the scene in Infinity War when Spider-Man is trying to save Mantis when the gravity on the planet's going all nuts up there on Titan, and he like flips through the center of like some debris that's flying through the air. It almost looked just like that. It was the same color palette, and like they swing through a circle of fallen debris. I am shocked that they put that in there, and it was a few different shots of that cinematic too. Like they showed a decent amount of it. It's probably not the whole thing. It obviously isn't the whole thing. I'm sure that entire scene, that whole section of the game is going to be really emotional, especially for Barret, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. I'm just surprised we got that much in this trailer. We see a little bit of the motorcycle chase, not a lot, but we do get a few different cuts here and there. So that was cool. I think they even show pretty much the end, which we're all assuming is going to be the end of the game, where they skid to the end of the street. I think they even showed the boss that shows up at the end. It was one of the tanky-looking bosses, although it might have been the Airbuster. It was Barret. There's a shot of Barret shooting one of his limit breaks at a boss, and I can't tell if the boss was the Airbuster, because immediately following that shot, I think Cloud falls off the bridge, which is when he falls into the church. But it also looked like it might have been the boss that you encounter on the highway outside of Midgar, which presumably is how they're ending the game. I can't imagine they would do anything else unless the open world piece of the game is going to completely go away. I saw there were some people commenting online about the potential for them not to end the game at the literal end of Midgar, but instead end it when they get to Calm and have Cloud go, so I guess you want to hear about Nibelheim, and then that's the cliffhanger, and that's where it ends. But that would mean they have to get to Calm. Now they could end the game at Midgar and then do the credits, and then they give you a little post-credit gameplay sequence or even just a cinematic that shows them getting to Calm, and then in part 2 we actually get to travel to Calm ourselves, or they're going to make the open world piece linear. This is all assuming we even get to go to Calm in this game. They'd make the open world area linear. I'm curious to see how they're going to do the open world, if they ever do it. Let's see. They showed a bunch of different bosses. I've already mentioned a couple of the ones that they've shown. Actually, so the second half of the trailer, the first half was the new theme song, but the second half was Those Who Fight Further. It was the boss fight theme. And it's great. It sounds so good. And they show Genova. They show the Genova fight, and they show some of the story scenes, and as part of that, they show Red 13. Gee, where do I start? I'll start with Red 13 real quick. He looks awesome. He looks amazing, and whoever they got to do his voice acting actually does a really good job. I wasn't a fan of the one line that he got in Advent Children, and honestly, I don't even remember the English version of it. I remember the Japanese version now, but he came off. I really like what they did with him. He looks great. He sounds great. I noticed in the Jenova fight, which I guess I need to come back to that. In the Jenova fight, you can see him running around in the background, even though he's not one of your party members. So there's folks online, and I guess I'm speculating too, that he may end up just being a guest. And because if the game is going to end right outside of Midgar, that whole scene with him is pretty much towards the end of Midgar. I mean, once you've defeated Jenova, spoilers for this game, I guess. Who cares? Once you've beaten Jenova, you go upstairs. I think you get captured. Oh no. Oh yeah, you get captured, but then Sephiroth comes through and Jenova escapes, and you basically, well, it was Jenova the whole time. You run upstairs to get to President Shinra, and Rufus shows up, and everybody else escapes while Cloud fights Rufus. So, I mean, there's really not a whole lot to do with Red 13 except maybe the boss battle on the highway, but that's it. And that would be where I'm going with that is the designers would have to make Red 13 playable. They would have had to put some effort into making him playable for this game, but it would have only been for such a short amount of time that I'm not sure they would have put the resources in to make him playable in this part of the game, and they're going to save that for the second part, and therefore he's just a guest, perhaps even just for the Jenova fight, and then we don't get to see any more of him until later. But I guess we will find out. Jenova looks so good, and that whole boss fight was amazing. I don't know if that whole area of that floor in the Shinra Tower like transforms to look like that, because Jenova, like, her cells like go everywhere and cause it to look like, I don't know, something out of Alien, or if that's all like in the mind of Cloud, because it looked like there were all these columns and pillars and stuff, and it just didn't look like the clean metallic Shinra building. It looked like something completely different, and that was really cool. I didn't expect to see that, and there's a couple different explanations for why it could look like that, and you know, I'm really excited to see what they do there. I think Jenova herself actually looked really good too. Like in Final Fantasy VII, in the game, it's kind of hard to even understand what it is she is or what she looks like, but she looks great in this. So really excited to see that. I'm also curious to see what they're gonna do with the dude that showed up on the motorcycle at some point in the trailer. Apparently his name is Roche, and he's a new character. He's some sort of antagonizing character, I guess. Maybe he was a member of Soldier. I don't know. I have no idea what he is or what they're gonna do with him. Hopefully it's not something stupid. Maybe it'll just be a little side plot. And I'm also curious to see what the spirits are. We keep seeing spirits in these different trailers, like these dark, dementory-looking spirits that are flying around in circles. And Cloud definitely sees them, because he sees them in an earlier trailer. So it's not just Aerith seeing them, but you know, I don't know what that is. I'm really curious to see what that is. That looks like the one big difference that wasn't in the original game, and I'm assuming it's Jenova. It has something to do with Jenova. I can't, you know, there's a lot of hooded figures in Final Fantasy VII, so maybe this is a replacement for the hooded figures, because they are all kind of shrouded in black, so maybe it's that. I don't know. I guess we will find out. So yeah, if you want to let me know what you thought of the trailer, feel free to leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on one of the other podcast stations, feel free to go to dirediredocs.com, and in the story for this podcast, leave a comment and come tell me what you thought about the trailer. But now we're going to take a quick mental break. One of the reasons for this podcast is to help me combat my anxiety. So for the next minute or two, let's relax and meditate with some music from Final Fantasy Tactics. that was Ovelia's Worries from Final Fantasy Tactics. I hope you were able to clear your thoughts, because now we're moving on to the list. The list is a continually growing list of every game I have ever played. There are currently 9 games on the list, but after today there will be 14 games on the list. I'm going to talk about each game and then reveal its ranking, and you can see the most up-to-date list on dirediredocs.com. Ooh, excuse me. Alright, so we're going to kick things off with Donkey Kong. You know, well, you don't know. You're about to know. I never really liked Donkey Kong. I played it on the original NES. Fun fact, that was actually the game where I learned the word crap. And I got in a lot of trouble for saying the word crap. My cousin was over and we were playing Donkey Kong and he died and said crap, and I thought it was the funniest thing, and so I started saying it, and I think we both got in trouble. So thanks, Donkey Kong. But seriously, Donkey Kong, the game, well, first of all, it was short, and second of all, the platforming in it was just so bad compared to a game like Super Mario Bros., which was the first game I had played on the NES. So then you go into Donkey Kong, and it was a step backwards. And so I couldn't get into it. I liked the music, I guess. I appreciated that it was Mario, and you were trying to save the princess. Although, technically, it's a different princess. But yeah, it just wasn't for me. So Donkey Kong, you're coming in on this list of 14 games at 9th place, above Pac-Man. So hey, you did better than Pac-Man. Good for you. Next up is Donkey Kong Jr. I actually like Donkey Kong Jr. a lot better. It still had some of the same problems with jumping and the slowness of it that was in Donkey Kong, but the gameplay with the vines made traversal a lot faster and smoother. I mean, you could slide down those vines really quick. I liked how you could hold on to 2 vines at once to go faster. So, plus it threw a lot of different enemy types at you. Like, it wasn't just barrels rolling down the thing, which technically there was more than that in Donkey Kong as well, but whatever. It also had fruit, although the fruit didn't really do anything to my knowledge. It had some moving platforms. It was more challenging and less frustrating than Donkey Kong, so for that reason, I enjoyed it a little bit more. Not a whole lot more. Donkey Kong Jr. comes in at 8th place, just above Donkey Kong. Next game we're adding to the list is Galaga. Now, Galaga's fun. I don't know about you, but you're just shooting at spaceships that are flying in circles and coming in different formations. For its time, it was a colorful, top-down shooter. It was out in space, so that was cool. The spaceships all had different little, different variations, different colors. You could join 2 ships together, so you could do double shot, and the sound effects were great. I mean, it was a great arcade game. It was a lot of fun. I can't remember what game I was talking about. It was in one of the previous podcasts. It might have been Space Invaders, actually, where a game like Galaga today is something that you would just pick up as like an app on your phone and play it for just a few minutes when you're bored, and then you move on. It's still that. I mean, or it is that today. Back then, it was something that you would play probably for hours trying to like beat the high score, bragging rights for friends and stuff like that. Anyway, Galaga's a lot of fun. It's coming in at 7th, which is just above Donkey Kong Jr., but there is a gap there between Galaga and Donkey Kong Jr. that I think is going to get filled over time as we are adding games to the list. Next up, before we get to our featured game, the last non-featured game going on to the list is Balloon Fight. I didn't play Balloon Fight on the NES. Fun fact, fun little tidbit. The first time I played Balloon Fight was actually on the GameCube, as a item that I found in Animal Crossing. I went and put it in my little house, and I booted it up, and I'm like, what is this? And it was so much fun. It's not, again, it's one of those games, arcadey type games, that today I wouldn't play a whole lot of. But back in the GameCube days, we weren't that far removed from the days of the NES. I mean, we were, but we weren't. And I don't know what it was. I think, being in Animal Crossing for so many hours at a time, and I was like, you know what, I'm bored. I'm just going to go play an arcade game. It felt like, I don't know, it was pretty meta, actually, that whole piece of that being in the game. There were other games in there, actually. I think Donkey Kong was in there. But there was just something about the momentum and the slow gravity in Balloon Fight that just really struck a chord with me. I really enjoyed. And then after defeating a level, you get different bonus levels, which were always challenging and fun. So you're trying to get all the balloons, pop all the balloons in the bonus challenges. So there was some encouragement to try and do good and progress through the game and not just put it down right away. The sound effects were great. I like the music, what little music there is in that game. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to say. Balloon Fight comes in 5th place, which is above Mario Brothers. Not Super Mario Brothers, just Mario Brothers. Okay, moment we've all been waiting for. We're going to move on to the featured game of this podcast being added to the list, and that is The Legend of Zelda, the first Zelda game ever made, the one that was put out on the NES. So I don't remember the first time I played it. I'm thinking back to my childhood, and we lived in one house for certain years, and then we moved to another house, and I'm pretty sure I remember playing it in both houses, which means I would have played it in at least kindergarten, first grade, somewhere in that time frame. Possibly even earlier. I think the game came out in 87. Gosh, what a game. I'm vaguely recalling, and I don't remember, I guess it would have been in the first house, vaguely recalling the first time I played it, where I'm just on that first screen, and I go in the door, I get the sword, and I come out of the door, and I'm just running around well, what am I supposed to do? Not realizing that you have to go all the way to the right or the left or up to get off the screen, and it progresses the screen to the next area. I was so used to Super Mario Brothers, I believe, that I was waiting for the level to scroll with me, and it didn't, and so I was like, what do I do? I probably got some help, or at least I figured it out pretty quick. And man, the size and scope of that game relative to any of the other games I had played at the time was just massive. Due in part to its size. I mean, it is a big game. There is a large map that you have to traverse on top of all the dungeons that you go through. So it did have the size, but it also had the secrets. I think that has been a staple of Zelda games, is just stuff that's hidden throughout the game. And once you find one secret and then you find another one and you realize these things could be anywhere, it got to the point where I've got the candle and I'm burning down every single bush and tree I can find in the hopes that it's going to reveal a stairway to some heart container or a hidden shop with even more items that I can get. Same thing with bombs, right? You're putting bombs on all the different mountainsides to see if you can find something hidden. And even in the dungeons themselves, there were all these different secrets with, you have to push the blocks to get into the door. You could bomb the walls and walk through the walls. So I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Something about expectations. Not exceeded my expectations. Subverted. That's it. Finally got it out there. It subverted expectations of what a game could be like at that time. and it was just done so well. It's one of the few games, I think, where the theme song, a theme song that is just on a continuous loop for pretty much the whole game, doesn't get old. I mean, the overworld theme just does not get old. I could play that game for hours and not get tired of hearing that song, or track rather, which is just amazing. And same with the dungeons. The dungeon theme is just on a loop once you get in there. And you know, that's it. I think there's the menu music, or the start menu, the title crawl. There's the music at the menu and when you game over screen, and then there's the Ganon music when you're in his area, and that's it. And it's all great. It's all fantastic. The music in that game definitely elevated what video game soundtracks could be back in that time, back in the late 80s. I guess I talked already about some of the secrets. I was actually just playing the other day in preparation for this podcast, just to fart around in there for a bit and try to remember some of the things that happened in that game. And I remembered I'm in the first dungeon, doing the dungeon, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I can go get the blue ring, which is over here. It's like, I'm not scared. Like, when I was a kid, I was scared to go get it. Like, I had to go and beat a few worlds to build up my confidence before I could go get the blue ring once I found out where the blue ring was. But I'm just like, what the hell am I scared of? Like, if I die, I die. It's not the big deal. And then I just run back over there and try again. So I ran over there, and you got those spinning things that come out of the ground. And then fortunately, I hit the right statue to make him come alive to reveal the stairs. I think that was also part of it. I could never remember which statue it was, so I was always afraid I was going to hit all these statues that went fast. They rocket off of the pedestal once you touch them, and that's probably why I died a lot as a kid in that area. Anyway, so I went in there, and I'm like, man, 250 rupees. I could get this right at the beginning of the game. I don't remember where you get the red ring, so presumably you could get that towards the beginning of the game too if you wanted. But yeah, for only 250 rupees, which I didn't have at the time. That was something else I remember about this game, was trying to, as a kid, I was already trying to find, I was min-maxing, right? Like, I was trying to find the best possible way to grind out rupees for the amount of time I was putting in. So, like, in the first dungeon, I found that fighting the skeletons, gosh, what are they actually called in the series? I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue. Something with a GOS at the end. The Falgos? That's not what it is. Anyway, when you fight those, you tend to get a lot. Those little weird water droplets used to give me a lot too. Anyway, yeah, I loved grinding rupees in this game because there were so many, you never knew, right, what you were going to find out there in the world. There were all these hidden shops that had these unique items, like there's the red candle, well, I think it's the blue candle that you can buy. There's heart containers that I think you can buy. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff out there, and I always wanted to have some rupees ready to go. I really appreciated the diversity of the world. So it's just one big continuous world, right? But it had biomes, and you know, we talk a lot about biomes when we think of a game like Minecraft, but it didn't occur to me until I was playing Zelda just recently that I'm like, wow, yeah, I guess you could just categorize all these different areas essentially as biomes, because it's just one big open world. And I'm wondering if that's the first game that has done something like that, if Zelda was the first one. And you know, it probably was, or at least it was the more popular one. It was the good one, the only good game at the time that had something like that. But yeah, like the grave site area, the cemetery, some of the high mountain stuff, a lot of the forests and the lost woods. Like, a lot of the staples that are in some of the later games were there in the first game. So yeah, that's real cool. I already talked about finding heart containers as a secret, but I think as a progression system back then, that was also really cool. I hadn't played any real RPGs yet, so seeing that you're able to progress your character with, well, equipment, but then also collecting different heart containers to be quote unquote stronger. Really, it's just so you can withstand more hits before you get nuked out of existence, which is a requirement when you get to some of the later areas of the game. Apparently there's only 5, maybe 6 secret hearts in the overworld. I guess all the rest come from the that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right at all. I can't remember how many hearts are in that game. Is it 16 or 18? I thought it was 20. But if it's 20 and you start off with 3 and there's 8 dungeons before you get to Ganon, I think. Or maybe there's 7 before you get to Ganon and Ganon's the 8th. Anyway, that would only get you to 10 or 11. So, and there's 2 full rows, so that would mean there'd be 9 out in the overworld. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So another thing Zelda did that's just mind-blowing. I mean, it's all these little things, some of them are big things, that just add up into something fantastic. The second quest, having basically an entire sequel, quote-unquote, it's not really a sequel in lore, but a sequel in gameplay to the game, in the game, once you beat the game, is just amazing. I mean, you know, everybody, when they talk about Pokemon Gold and Silver, love to talk about how that first time when you beat the game and you're like, wait a minute, Kanto's in here too, and you can go through the entire first game in Gold and Silver. It's like, wow, that's nuts. This was that. Granted, it's not continuous like Pokemon Gold and Silver was, where it's just all one big save file, but you could play the whole game over. All the dungeons are in different areas, all the dungeons are mixed up, the items are all in different areas, so if you were addicted to adventuring and the secrets and trying to figure all that stuff out, it's all in new places now once you've gotten it all figured out. And, you know, when it came out back then, I'm sure there were guides that you could buy, but there was no internet, so you couldn't go and figure out how to do all this online like you could today. It was something different. I promise I'm not one of those people that were like, in my day, we didn't have internet to look up games. It's not that, it's just there wasn't that. So everybody was forced to kind of figure it out on their own, or through word of mouth, right? You go to school and you're talking with your friends and it's like, hey, I found you could get the candle if you go over here and burn down this bush with the other candle or whatever. And you help each other out that way. So there was a little bit of community, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Not that there isn't community in these online forums and game facts or game FAQs, however you pronounce it. But anyway, there's that. Zelda also came in a gold cartridge, which really, really set it apart from other games on the Nintendo. It was just like, what is this majestic looking golden cartridge here that I've got in my hands? Anyway, let's see. I guess there really isn't a whole lot that I want to say about Zelda. I mean, I don't. It's not perfect, but it's perfect. Like, I wouldn't give it a perfect 10 if I was giving it a rating. But man, what a game. You know, that is Zelda, the original Zelda, is one of the games that game makers at that time had to look at as the bar for quality of a game, because man, I'm pretty sure at the time that blew everything else away, Super Mario Brothers included, which I rated pretty highly in the last episode of this podcast, so I guess spoilers for some of the ranking. I didn't talk about, real quickly before I forget, I didn't talk about in the dungeons, you know, we talked about the puzzle nature of the dungeons. they were difficult, especially as you progressed. And those bosses, it was always, you were trying to, you're working your way through, and it's like, you know that at the end of this dungeon, there's going to be a boss, and you're not sure if it's going to be something that's easy to deal with or not. I mean, I can't even remember what all the bosses were, to be perfectly honest. Now I need to go back through and actually play the whole damn thing. But as you're getting close to the end and you can hear a roar coming from the boss to let you know you're close, like the game like implants this sense of dread into you, and you haven't even seen what the boss is. It's the little subtle things like that make Zelda stand apart from practically all the other games that came out on the NES. I mean, as I go through the catalog of games that I've played on the NES and I put them up here on the list, I'd be curious to see if there is a game I would, well, okay. There's probably a very, very short list of games that I think would compete with Zelda. We'll get there eventually. I just remembered. Oh gosh, yeah. No, there's a few. But Zelda is up there. It is way up there. It is so far up there that I am actually going to put Zelda in second place on the list. I am putting it above World of Warcraft, which previously held the second spot, and below Final Fantasy VII. The Legend of Zelda, to this day, is one of my all-time favorite games. In fact, in many ways, I like it as the best. It's the best Zelda. I'm not saying it is. In many ways it is, but I wouldn't say it is overall. That probably goes to either Ocarina of Time, maybe Breath of the Wild. I don't know. One day when I get to those games and we put them on the list, I guess we'll see who wins the Zelda crown. But that first game is a contender for sure. Anyway, that does it for this episode of the Dire podcast. Thank you for listening. Again, please check out dirediredocs.com for podcast updates and updates on other content that I'm making either for the website or for YouTube. This is Sean Pfeil, and this has been the Dire podcast. Thank you very much.